see you move like that. Like what? Like that. Let me see you move like that.
Hi everybody, my name's Neil, I'm the founder of Fresh Air, and we make podcasts for brands. So to be very clear today, so far you've heard some brilliant people tell you about existing podcasts that you can advertise around. That's not what we do. We make podcasts that can become a piece of your brand's content with creative flair, commercial nous, and really building something for yourself in the podcast space, and then a campaign around that. We'll tell you at the end how you can come to us and we can do a workshop with you, no cost, no obligation, but think about your brand and how you might build your own podcast, and we will help you work out the logistics and the reasoning for that. But for now, we're going to tell you about our biggest project of the year, which is called Show on the Road for Auto Trader. In a moment, Rich will talk through the science bit, but for now, we're going to hear about the creative part of this project with our Director of Content, Michaela Hallam.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to James Sims-Williams, who is Senior Creative at Auto Trader and our client in this conversation, who is very kindly joining us today to lift the lid on some of the secrets to making what has been a hugely successful but also incredibly ambitious podcast. But before we delve under the bonnet, I've got to try and get some kind of car-related puns in there. Let's take a whistle-stop tour of Show on the Road in the making.
No way. This is amazing. You like? Is this for me? Yeah. Oh my God. I love little toy smart cars. They're the best. Go, go, giddy, giddy, go, giddy, giddy, go. And we'd just have the music blasting. It was like the best thing ever when you were like 17.
Yeah, look, he's a young Manchester City. Oh, I would have waved.
So Oprah and Jill hug,
And
they try to move they are stuck. Their sequence has intertwined. They are stuck together. Oprah's assistants are trying to unhinge her. They can't unhinge the dresses. So my wife, who's super nervous to meet Oprah, is now stuck to Oprah.
Sat across like Kendrick Lamar, Jay-Z, Ariana Grande, like whoever. I did Strictly, and all of a sudden my mum and like all of all my auntie friends like, oh wow!
Now you've made it.
Yeah.
This is London's best kebab, by the way, just in case you're wondering. London best kebab. I think they've also had to say London best kebab for legal reasons. It's not London. Tell you what, and it's been around for many years because I've been in there many, many times.
I was just at the bridge there once, and I was filming a scrap train come out. When I noticed a girl behind me kind of standing there, and then she said, "Excuse me, do you make train videos?" And it was the first time someone had said that to me. And I was like completely in shock, and she asked for a photo.
I remember telling my mom and dad that I wanted to be a dancer, and like, I was like, I love to study, but I want to be a dancer. And I want to like make a living of this.
Oh, so this is my dance school?
Yes.
Hello. Oh, how do we put this as my dance teacher?
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Hello, are you all right?
So that gives you an idea of the format that we created for Show on the Road, and we'll come back to that in a bit more detail in a bit. There you saw Jill Scott, Clara Ampho, Paul Brunson, Ian Sterling, Poppy O'Toole, Gorka Marquez, Francis Bourgeois, or the Train Guy, and Scarlett Moffat. But let's start at the beginning, James. Why did you decide to build your own podcast? Why didn't you just advertise around everybody else's?
So there were kind of two parts to this for Auto Trader. Firstly, we have an amazing brand heritage with the magazine. It's been around for 45 years. We started in 1977. And what that's given us is an amazing kind of front of mind knowledge for a lot of people. But the problem with that is that they all happen to be over 30. So first of all, we really wanted to try and get into the heads of a new, younger audience that we'd never really accessed before. And to give you an idea of how far this kind of idea of us being a magazine goes, we've actually not been doing the magazine for 10 years now. We've been digital only since 2013.
And how did we find that out?
So Fresh Air, it turns out, didn't know that. And when they were first ready to pitch to us, Neil has admitted that he actually went into a newsagent to look for the magazine and was disappointed not to be able to buy one.
That was slightly awkward, pitching to the client.
So that was, yeah.
But it also proved the case that they needed to do this job.
Yeah, so we really needed to access a new audience that we weren't speaking to already. Our traditional marketing does an amazing job at talking to petrol heads, particularly on YouTube and social, where we have a really good, strong following. But there's only a very small part of the country who are petrol heads, really, and actually the audiences we need to access are much bigger than that, and particularly younger audiences, under 30, and also more female audiences. We've had a harder time accessing with our traditional marketing, so this was an opportunity for that, really.
Brilliant. So you wanted to reach a mainstream audience who aren't necessarily into cars. And finally, I can contribute something to the conversation because that was exactly someone like me. One of the things that you guys said really early doors, and which was brilliant for us, is that you wanted to incorporate just enough car. You were really conscious of who your target audience were, and you also were really conscious that you didn't want to make a 30-minute long advert for Auto Trader. So that brings us to our format. If you can talk us through what you did and how the benefit of kind of taking a traditional celebrity podcast out of the studio and onto the road.
Yeah, so you've already seen a few clips of the kind of thing we did, which was matching up celebrities with a car that was relevant to them. That was our part where we provided just enough car, something we kept checking against the whole way through the series. And we took those celebrities on a road trip visiting places that were really relevant to them. And what we found is that actually the kind of conversations you have in a car in this much more informal setting where you're sat next to each other rather than opposite each other and have all of that stimulus of places that you know and love around you led to much better conversations than we might have been able to bring out in a studio, much deeper. And actually this was reflected back to us from what the celebrities themselves said. We had amazing feedback from them all at the end of the day usually, where they just said that was unlike any project they've been involved with before and how much they'd love working with us.
I think kind of it was a show on the road, but also a kind of a literal trip down memory lane. And I think a lot of the guests surprised themselves with the memories that were unearthed. And there were some kind of genuine moments that we wouldn't have heard before from those people. Jill Scott kind of driving down to the training ground was saying, I've actually got the butterflies in my stomach that I would have had all those years ago, kind of coming towards it.
Yeah, and of course there were amazing chance encounters like you saw there with Scarlett Moffat. We bumped into her old dance teacher in her hometown in County Durham, and that was not planned at all. And they had this really amazing conversation just through the car window that we could bring to our listeners, and it felt very warm and really authentic, actually.
And you were really considered as well in the breadth of contributors, guests that we invited to come onto the podcast. And again, that was part of your mainstream objective.
Yeah, I think what we didn't want was car fans. You know, we were trying to stay away from that kind of petrol head audience that we already do so well. And actually, we had celebrities we talked to about coming on the show, and some of them we thought maybe they were taking it to be too car focused, and that's not what we wanted at all. And I mean, the beauty of doing a celebrity podcast like this is that we could really cherry pick who we wanted based on what their audience were and make sure that we kind of had crafted exactly what audience we'd be accessing for this.
Yeah, so I mean, that was a strategic decision from sport, entertainment, music, TikTok stars. And so kind of we covered a whole breadth of talent across the series. I just want to pause for just a minute on choosing our presenter as well. That was also part of our Just Enough car, Just Enough brand.
Yeah, so Alex Legui, who you saw there, is she presents some of our YouTube content, but she's a fantastic woman who's done so many different things. She's actually a psychotherapist, as well as a car fan, and also TV presenter, and a yoga instructor as well. I mean, there's so many.
Which is why she looks like she does.
There are so many. But she was the perfect person to be able to bring out these stories from the celebrities, just because she has so much experience herself in different areas. And the main thing was that she's able to drive a car and interview someone at the same time, which I think
drive
not to be
and properly
underestimated.
listen was a real skill that was invaluable. Okay, moving on a little bit. The brilliant thing about podcasts are that nobody listens to them accidentally. You choose to tune into and listen to a podcast. The challenge, however, is that no matter how brilliant your content, your potential audience needs to know about it in the first place. And the other thing that Auto Trader were hugely ambitious with was about the marketing and promotion and kind of understanding that a podcast can be at the very heart, the full centre of your communications. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you evolved that and kind of the different offshoots that were put into place around the podcast.
It was clear from the start for us that we wanted this to be something that could really gain momentum over a number of series, and we knew that we would have to commit significant budget to that as well. So we toyed with at the start for quite a while how much we really wanted to put behind it, and we ended up going for a kind of 2-to-1 ratio on promo spend to production spend. So it's quite a significant investment for us. But at Auto Trader, we have an amazing team that could make this a huge campaign, and we utilised our owned paid and earned channels to go further. We also utilised the celebrities posting content as well, and we got them to do it in their own style, which was...
I think that was really helpful in terms of the credibility of the promo assets that were created, because we kind of empowered each of the guests to make sure that it was in the style of the content that their audience were already used to seeing.
I think Francis Bourgeois is an incredible example of that, because for him to post something, he was never going to post something that was our content. It had to be him in his own iconic style, and we kind of enabled him to do that with us on the day, so that it really felt authentic to his audience. And I think that was a really successful piece of content that he posted.
There's one thing I want to say before we move on, was that you also filled a car with potatoes.
Yeah, so we were looking to extend this campaign any way we could, and we came up with a great idea for a social activation. So I don't know how many people knew who she was, but the lady in the first clip, Poppy O'Toole, also known as Poppy Cooks on Instagram and TikTok, also known as the Potato Queen. She's known for her potato recipes. So we surprised her with a smart car, the one you saw there, that was filled to the brim with potatoes. And we did a social activation on this where people had to guess how many potatoes were in the car to win the car after the series had aired. And I think we got something like 20,000 guesses on our Instagram video organically, which was unreal.
Podcast at the heart of your commerce channel. That was really successful. Was the podcast series 1 successful? Can we break an embargo and share some news?
Well, we are going ahead with series 2. We've decided, early stages of planning at the moment, but I think obviously that gives you an indication of how pleased we were with the first series. We've had amazing feedback from the leadership team and the board at Auto Trader as well, which is always nice to hear, and amazing buy-in across the company for it, as well as being aware that, this is something that, to get the full benefit out of it, you need to really go in big and commit to multiple series. So, we've got an amazing series 1 to build on, and we're going to make series 2 even better.
Thank you, James. And very finally, reflecting on the process, if anybody in the room here was considering on building their own and investing in creating their own IP, what would be your 3 top tips?
First tip would be work with Fresh Air, because they're fantastic.
I genuinely didn't ask him to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not in the
He's
contract
right.
or anything. I don't have to say it. I would say get involved with the process. I don't think, well, from what Fresh Air have told me, this isn't something that every company does, but we were involved really heavily with them from the start, collaborating fully the whole way through. We even made them change the idea completely after about a month and a half, which they coped with fantastically. And I think what that's enabled us to do is have amazing buy-in from around Auto Trader, and I think that's just when the best products are made, when everyone's contributing. So.
On which note, I don't want to leave the stage without saying thank you to the amazing team at Fresh Air, Annie, Ollie, Becky, Basil and Clara, without which this would not have been possible, and collaborating with you guys as well. And thank you, James, so much for joining us on stage. James Sims-Williams, Senior Creative at Auto Trader. And finally, thank
Pleasure,
you.
thank you.
I should let you have the applause. I'm going to hand you over to Richard, Director of Content. No, I'm Director of Content. He is Director of Marketing and Growth. And if you receive our email, also director of pressing send on the email, you can subscribe on our website to do a little bit more of the science bit.
Hello. Right, I'm going to stand. I don't know about you, but after hearing from Auto Trader, I want to be a podcaster. I want to build my own show, but there's a problem. There's something called the European Podcast Mountain, which is 5 million podcasts and counting, and half of them get less than 50 listens an episode. So how do you make your podcast a success? So first of all, we need a map and a crowbarred analogy. And I immediately went to the route that I know best, the road map I know the best. This is the M4 to Bristol. I know what you're all thinking. Which service station is best to stop for a coffee and a travel wee? So for the next minutes, 6 minutes, we're going to go to Heston, Reading, Cheveley, Membry, and of course, Lee Delamere. So we start... Ooh, I'm going to cope with this microphone and cards. So we start at Heston and the brain. All of us in this room are trying to get everyone else's brain to respond, react, change to what we do. And I love this from Stylist magazine. It encapsulates so nicely in a few lines why we love podcasts. Finding a good podcast can be like making a new friend. It might accompany you on your daily walk or hang out with you while cooking dinner. It offers sage advice and witty observations. It becomes an essential part of your routine. Now, who wouldn't want their brand to be thought of in the same way? So you could be that new friend. So it's all to do with how your brain responds to podcasts. And our brains are crowded with things to see. We're a visually dominant species. And what our brain is constantly doing, is without us even trying, is trying to edit our attention to what we really need to pay attention to. Whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or a sweaty man in a t-shirt. A podcast, a piece of sound, is different. With 90% of us wearing headphones, all our attention is in our ears. We're not having to edit around it. And this leads to two things. It frees up our attention to imagine what we're hearing, so we can sort of make up what the podcast and the host looks like in our head, which allows us to concentrate for a lot longer, take in much more detail and nuance, and it makes us feel like we're around the table with them. And our brains are coded to hear stories. Some of our earliest formative memories, the first things we heard were our parents' voices telling us bedtime stories. And they didn't give us a bullet point list of facts. They were woven into the stories they were telling us. So this is a famous story from Audible that we dug out. One group of people watched Martin Luther King's speech in audio and video, and one group just listened. The pink line shows how much richer that memory formation is, and how much is going on in the brain as they were listening. And Spotify agreed as well. So a recent survey, 66% thought there was too much visual stimulation in this world, and audio was a great way to escape. So remember, a good podcast is a witty new friend, a good walk, a daily ritual, which is a high bar to clear. Well, our job is to make that scary process oh so simple. So at Fresh Air, we kick off with every project with a question we all ask when we get to Reading Services: why? Why make a podcast? And I tell you now, those of us who've grown up with massive numbers on a media plan or in a Facebook campaign, podcasts aren't all about reach. Podcast sits along cinema at the bottom left-hand corner of this chart. But like cinema, which is the same wide-eyed view, a podcast is all about attention. I showed this last year, and it's worth showing again. This from Lumen Eye Tracking is the amount of attention that someone gives to a 30-second TV ad, 13 seconds. So when you're buying a podcast, you're buying headphones on attention, an average of about 26 minutes per episode. So no one listens to a podcast by mistake. Get people to choose you rather than disrupting their day. And The Guardian agrees. This is their Tapestry research, and podcasts command the highest attention, 65% versus 39% on TV. So remember, a podcast is like a sit-down meal of your brand, not a high-reach snack, a disruptive blast of a TV ad or a social ad. It's intimate, it's quality time spent, and it's intelligent and young. So we've got to Cheveley and format, and this is where our experience of making lots of shows for the BBC, and broadcast radio comes to the fore. And so this is all about building your own show, owning your own IP. So it's not just about a podcast, it's about a video, a t-shirt, merchandise, events, lots and lots of things you can do with your own IP. And we use the 3 R's when we come to you with our ideas for the show. Repeatable. Is it something that has a set format, you know what to expect when you listen? Relatable. Is it a story your target audience wants to hear and will want to hear more? Is it from hosts and guests that talk their language? Relevant. Is it useful? Is it topical to what people are searching for now? And topicality is so important. We love that emergency podcast when big news breaks. And all important as well, we can drive revenue. We now use Podscribe and Spotify Ad Analytics to use the words ROAS and attribution confidently. So if revenue is a goal, we will track it to show genuine outcomes. And here are 3 examples of just that. We've just talked about Show on the Road. It's a brilliant example of ambition and distributing your podcast and reaching that younger audience. The middle one is the Burger Files. It's a crazy, funny project about the undiscovered crime of burger crime with Wendy's Burgers. And the one on the right is Legal in General. They've just launched Kia Commodore into this world and reached an 85% 18 to 34 audience with about 200,000 minutes spent so far. And so we've reached my personal favourite. This is Membry, the one with the pointy aerial. It's normally about middle of the road. It's good. So this is all about how you build your podcast. Podcasts reward proper media planning, thinking clearly about the context that the promotion is seen. Social is like a brief snack of your original podcast meal. So it's brilliant for awareness, and that's backed up by Ofcom here. But I love the word of mouth stat in this slide. A recommend from a friend is so much more powerful than any straight advertising. I also love the opportunity of I don't hear about new podcasts right at the bottom. Although the market's becoming much more effective for the UK population, we've still got a long way to go. But then the key difference is we discover podcasts via the podcast platform and by search. So Spotify's new impression data that they're giving us on Spotify for podcasts is really promising here. It gives us a proxy for demand for our podcasts. But don't expect paid social or programmatic to deliver genuine, loyal podcast listeners. So our tips. Be clear on whether you're distributing your brand for reach and what you're doing to drive downloads and followers. A good plan balances both dependent on your objectives. And that's what we start with. What podcasting can do for your brand and your business. And so we get to the final stop, Lee Delamere, and it's all about my favourite word, tracking. We don't make vanity projects. We create very clear goals up front with all our work, and that's the fundamentals that we track all the time. With brand, in a recent study with a global media brand, we went across the board 20% increases in all brand messaging, and over 40% of US audiences have just said they want to hear podcasts from their favourite brands. So it's really growing. And we knit together all the insights from all the podcast platforms to hit your goals. But our most reliable stat is this cost per minute of attention. And our key benchmark is less than 10p cost per minute of attention. And here are some of the podcasts that have broken that magic mark, work we're incredibly proud of for WWF, Bertarelli, Q, and English Heritage. And finally, what ingredients do they all share? Originality, a clear proposition, depth and nuance, the confidence to use a length of podcasting, talent, focusing on the alchemy we've talked about throughout, frequency, the confidence to an always-on channel or a long series, and the more frequently the release, the more the podcast platform gets it. And networks, podcasting a brilliant way to feed and reward your networks. And finally, some money. Paying the experts in this room to do it properly and embrace this wonderful platform that podcasting gives us, and a really unique channel to build your business. So I'll leave you with this. You're in the room, you may have already dipped your toe in the water, but my ask is to keep podcasting special. Reward your listener's choice, build for the long term, be the daily ritual, be that new friend, and don't be clickbait. Thank you.